Shortly after I recorded the Spouses Roundtable, Jessica, the millennial spouse whose husband Andrew served on the ground during the Afghanistan exit, reached out to me to say that Andrew was ready to share his story. Still serving, Andrew felt limited in what he could say, as well as whether he was ready to share it. None of us could forget the powerful images of the chaos at the Kabul airport in August of 2021. It is seared into our minds, much like the stories from the fall of Saigon in 1975, and what many compare it to. Here's a clip from those who served during the evacuation of Saigon in 1975.
It was absolute chaos.
All your regulations went out the door that day.
There was tremendous confusion.
It was like a tsunami of people.
The streets are full, the embassy grounds are absolutely packed with people. And my first trip into the embassy was strictly to get the ambassador, and he didn't get on. And that was like 1 p.m. And so we don't know what to do now. So we just start shuttling people up, and this goes on, and the crowds.
There was no end to it.
Never dissipate.
There was no end to it. And you just kept flying until really you reached your physical and your mental limitations. When you would land, you'd just be mobbed by people. And so you look back and you could see everybody climbing in. You could feel the helicopter rock a little bit. Who knows how many were back there? I have no idea. You just slowly start to lift up. Occasionally you'd take off, and out of total desperation that they were hanging onto the skids. And what are you going to do? It was beyond your control.
You know, it's an interesting question of how many trips you made and how many, I don't know to be exact, but I think mine was close to 14 trips in and out. I don't think I felt physical fatigue like I felt mental fatigue. It was just, those crowds were never getting any smaller.
No.
You're thinking, this can't end. How do we end something that's the same size crowd 12 hours into this thing as it was when we started? And we're not making a dent.
Stories like these are nothing short of remarkable. Similar stories from Afghanistan, like the one you're about to hear, are still surfacing. They reveal the incredible training of our U.S. and allied partners, but also the wounding of moral and ethical decisions that are difficult to make sense of and challenging to heal from. Rather than being a voyeur as you listen, I hope these episodes invite you to think about how you might bring purpose from your own story and how these stories can inspire you to be a leader that others want to follow. I'm Corie Weathers. You're listening to Military Culture Shift, a limited series podcast on the impact of war, money, and generational perspective on morale, retention, and leadership. Andrew, thank you so much for jumping on, for being willing to share your story today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Corie. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I would love to just dive in and just give you an opportunity to share with everybody a little bit about your background in the Marines.
Certainly. I was first stationed as an artillery officer out in California in 29 Palms in 3rd Battalion, 11th Marines, and spent several years out there training really hard and learning the technical skills of artillery, but also developing on the leadership front, kind of understanding what does it actually mean to lead people, and all of these things that I wanted as far as becoming an officer to actually practice and exercise some of those. With the benefit of my enlisted experience, I was able to kind of relate to the Marines on a level. But what was unique about that unit was the timing and the drill field, and being out there in California meant that I had missed some of the deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. I did some deployments out there in 311, but some of the other ones I had missed. So I wanted to kind of further that exposure and further my ability to continue to develop. I got selected to go be an instructor at the basic school, where all entry-level officers in the Marine Corps go to learn to be a rifle platoon commander. So I was there for several years, teaching basic tactics, teaching ethics, teaching decision-making, and teaching other people about some of the things that I had learned about. I got selected after leaving there to go to Expeditionary Warfare School to learn kind of the behind the scenes tasking, planning, strategizing for Marine Corps operations, where captains get to go. They pick about the top 30% of captains that are moving in a year. They get to go to Expeditionary Warfare School. So that's where I went. On the back end of that, it was time to go into command. So this is 8 years of prep time for a young officer to get ready to go into command. So like the mindset is there.
Mm-hmm.
You are hungry, you are eager as a combat arms officer to transition from all of this prep time, years in the field training, years mentoring and being mentored, and then it's time to go. It's
Mm-hmm.
time to go be a commander. So I was sent to 2nd Battalion, 10th Marines out in Camp Lejeune, and when I got there, several of the batteries were deployed, and I was in sort of a holding pattern. So because of my background, I'd had some exposure to testing and evaluating. So I was helping out in the operations section, and I got pulled into my boss's office one day, and he said, "Hey, I won't get into the gory details, but long story short, there was a commander who was attached to a unit, and I was going to replace him.
Mm-hmm.
So take that for what it is."
Mm-hmm.
And it was time to go. This was a Thursday, and we're all. This is mid-August. This is a Thursday in mid-August, and I'm being told you're going to Afghanistan.
So this is 2021 by now.
Yes. I mean, earlier that spring, there were indications that the situation in Afghanistan was deteriorating. I think there is a sentiment here that's really important. This all played out on the news and in social media.
Yeah.
Everyone, and I experienced this in real time, everyone was an armchair quarterback of our decisions in real time.
Yeah.
Which is unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We studied what was coming out of the situation in Afghanistan at Expeditionary Warfare School. There is some irony, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later. I was part of one of the areas where we were learning in expedition at EWS. I'll say EWS, that's easier to say. Mm-hmm. Some of the things we were learning at EWS were about a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation operation. One of the jobs that I was tasked to plan at EWS was how do you manage the population of people that are being evacuated, mm-hmm. which there's no way. It's just kind of how it worked out. That's exactly what I wound up being responsible for at HKIA. So yeah, 100%. I was following along. We were getting briefed. We were getting told what was going on. But until that conversation with my battalion commander, I was going to be doing something else. So much so that I got a dog the weekend before to have a little friend to keep me company in Camp Lejeune.
So when you received this information Thursday that you'd be in Afghanistan by Sunday, having seen some of this play out, what was your initial thought? What was your feeling?
The first thing I thought of was my family.
Yeah.
And so not so delicately, I got on the phone with Jessie and I said, "Hey, I need you to come here." She says, "Why?" I said, "I can't really tell you. I need you to come here." So we sorted through that. That was thought number one. Thought number two is, who are these Marines? Who are these Marines that I'm going to go work with? Yeah. Who are the players? Who's in the command structure? Who do I need to be talking to right now? Where's all my stuff? What's coming?
Almost like it was so fast, you didn't have time to really have much emotion about it other than leaving.
Certainly. And so you start solving problems, and that's maybe another theme here. There was an endless set of problems, and you just solve problems. Mm-hmm. Some things that really helped. There were some strong staff non-commissioned officers on the enlisted side at 210, the battalion, who helped me get up to speed with who the Marines were. And I had a strong group of staff and COs. So those relationships we were able to build rapidly. Mm-hmm. I have, and he is a dear friend to me. He was the executive officer of that battalion at the time. He's about to take command of that battalion. He pulled me into his office, and he He said, I need to get you on the phone with somebody right now. He put me on the phone with a former commander of that battery, Echo Battery 210. And he was the commander on the border with Syria and Iraq. And he'd lost some Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to have a conversation with another man who was the commander of a unit that I was about to command,
Mm-hmm.
who had the context and experience of combat and of loss.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked to me about a conversation that he'd had after they were rocketed. And he asked a question of himself that he shared with me. He said, what's the best thing that could happen right now? The Marines were upset. The Marines were afraid. The Marines felt maybe even a little bit hopeless. And he said, the best thing that could happen right now is if we got rocketed again. Not because he wanted anybody to get hurt, but because I need the Marines to understand that while we are in danger, while we're facing a risky situation, not every bad thing that happens ends in calamity.
Yeah.
And he says, you're going to meet moments. He had no way of knowing what was going to happen. I didn't either. I was so naive. He said, you're going to have moments here where you're going to need to ask yourself, what's the best thing what can I do right now? What's the best thing that can happen for these Marines right now? He said, have your head screwed on straight and you're going to be okay. There may be a natural tendency to want to pull away from that, to be fearful, or to say, we have met some end. And that kind of mindset, that shift in that mindset can dissolve the camaraderie in a unit, it can dissolve the confidence in the unit. It can dissolve the juniors' ability to be able to listen to their leadership. And in that moment, he and another leader looked at each other and said, what could happen right now that would be the best thing to focus on? And he said, we need to message to these Marines that yes, something bad happened. We are going to push forward. We're going to absorb this and we're going to push forward.
What I hear you saying is that in those moments of leadership, when you see morale, starting to fade away, when you're seeing courage fade away, that when you have the ability to remind people, this is what you were trained to do, this is what you are talented to do, that you empower people to lean into what they already know they're capable of. Is that what I hear you saying?
I think that is spot on. You said it way better than I did. But yeah, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And then understanding those moments of transition and where does the leader need to be?
Yeah.
Because you can communicate something very directly, very simply, and it keeps your Marines in the fight, keeps them engaged, and it keeps them willing to keep doing something hard.
And it sounds like that stuck with you for this.
It did. And then the second big impact, we were all under the assumption that this was going to be a relatively peaceful event. A non-combatant evacuation operation is chaotic. It can be hectic. People are maybe fearful, but there was an idea that this was gonna play itself out, and we were gonna play our role, and we were gonna leave this country. But that's not what happened. But in that moment, the mindset was this is what we were expecting. There was another moment the Sunday before I was in Afghanistan, so 1 week removed. My pastor at church was preaching out of Habakkuk. So there is a leader who's standing on the walls of Jerusalem, pending a battle. And he sees this coming, and he asks God, why is this happening? Why are you letting this happen? And in this moment of personal defeat, fear, anxiousness, what's coming, violence is coming, horrible things are coming. God said to him, who are you? And that answer isn't like putting Habakkuk in his place. His answer is, I'm God. Why are you worrying about this? So now it's Monday, and I'm in Afghanistan in a machine gun tower at HKIA. And I'm standing in a tower and I'm looking out at this thing that is happening. And I'm asking God, why is this happening? I got to remember right there in that moment, who are you? I'm God.
First of all, how powerful that is, and what a good God to provide that ahead of time. Maybe share, once you're there and you're seeing all of this, how was your mind with that preparation ahead of time, like processing what was happening in front of you. But when you're now in a situation where there is so much chaos and you want to call upon training you've had, you want to be able to make sense of it somehow and create order to it. What was that like for you?
So you're talking about God's timing and God's knowledge. When I got off the plane and I'm on the runway in Afghanistan, and there's tracers going overhead and there's people screaming and this horrible situation is unfolding. The sergeant major of the unit meets me at the apron of the runway. That sergeant major was my drill instructor in 2004. Immediate confidence boost. Immediate. Because I know this man and he knows me. As I'm making my way to the airplane that's going to fly me from Kuwait to Afghanistan, I come around a corner and one of the adjacent company commanders is a man that I went through training and then trained with at the basic school. So a fellow instructor, and we're looking at each other, and I flew with his company into Afghanistan. Immediate confidence boost. As I'm making my way around and I'm
like
seeing
you've got your people.
My people.
Yeah.
As I'm making my way around the base and I'm understanding the layout of where different units are and where my Marines are, because we were distributed across different parts of the base. And it may be valuable to talk about what that layout was. But as I'm moving around the base, I come around a corner and a guy that I was a drill instructor with, which you work endless hours. Anybody that's familiar with entry-level training in any of the services will be familiar with like the bond that's likely there between two people that are drill instructors together. I come around a corner and the drill instructor who trained me to be a drill instructor is now a first sergeant in another one of the adjacent companies. Confidence boost. So I'm like, okay, I got God on my side, big boost. My guys are here. Huge boost. And then I meet the Marines and they're getting me up to speed. I don't have to worry about, do I need to start making a whole bunch of decisions? Here's the reality. I didn't train these Marines. I didn't form the culture in that unit. It was not time to come in and give everybody Andy's tidbits of leadership and, some dramatic quote that's going to help the unit coalesce around an ideal. Like no, we're not doing that. It was time to understand the job at hand and go to work. I think that mindset, coupled with maybe just how I kind of came up, allowed me to just recognize what we needed to do. And I really benefited from having some tremendous officers in that unit. I wish there was a way I could put my arms around every last one of the officers and staff NCOs and tell them what I think about them. And just tell them how much they mean to me. And the Marines, there were 100 of us there and my corpsmen. I wish I could put my arms around every single one of their necks right now and tell them how much I love them. But they were amazing. They were amazing. They understood what we needed to do. And we were able to find something resembling success. What
did you end up actually being tasked to do?
Folks may have seen pictures of that base. Some small towns in America, you may be familiar with like a runway that has like a military base on one side of the runway and like a civilian terminal on the other side of the runway. That's kind of what we're talking about here. So this is a commercial runway in the middle of a big city. The standards of living in Kabul are a little bit different than here, but functionally we're talking about the same thing. On the north side of that runway was a military base. So hangars, military construction type buildings, and the runway itself kind of ran east to west. On the far eastern end of that runway was kind of an industrial complex. There was a cement factory out there. There was something that looked like a trash facility. There's storage lots for all kinds of different shipping containers. This is an expanse of space, like you'd see outside of any, municipal airport. There's like all this stuff, this space adjacent to it. So when I showed up, my Marines were distributed between North Gate, which was kind of on the northeastern corner of that military side of the base. And then I had a handful of Marines that were helping out near Eastgate, which was kind of on the southeastern corner. And we were just sort of helping out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a rotation of Marines that were helping deal with little problems here and there, moving things around. But for the most part, it was still early enough before the operation had really picked up steam that the Marines were waiting for a task. I immediately linked up with my executive officer, who's an incredible man, who had been manning the helm, so to speak, for the couple of days while they were waiting for me to get there. And then my other platoon commanders, who were all kind of managing these clumps of people. There were 103 of my unit there that were part of Battalion Landing Team 1-8. So I showed up. I got taken in to meet the commander, who was a very direct, very thoughtful, very intelligent leader. And he thanked me for hurrying up and getting there quickly, which is a funny story, but maybe for another time. So he thanked me for getting there quickly. And he said, hey, I need you to, get an assessment of where your folks are at, and then stand by because I'm going to have a job for you here within the next couple of hours. So I went around, spent that evening meeting the Marines wherever they were on the base, and just getting us ready, figuring out what we would need. So the next time I spoke with the battalion commander was to be told we were expecting an influx of people into the base. Now, in the same time span, in the news, we saw some of the administration messaging like we expect to increase the capacity. We want to get more folks out, and I can say, it's interesting that the interplay of policy decisions being stated on the news and then the direct impact of how that felt to us.
Mm.
So originally, it was going to be a coalition, passport holders, embassy employees, pretty specific category. And then it got opened up to other, at-risk people, define what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, what we need to have is a capacity to hold people on this base. Now, everybody saw when the runway got taken over
Mm-hmm.
by folks, and we just didn't have the ability to kind of put all those people somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't risk that again. If we lost the runway, we lose the operation.
Yeah.
So while the explicit task was develop a plan to house these people and take care of them until they can be processed, the implicit task is hold the runway.
Yeah.
That was our job.
So what started off as managing the people ended up changing, would you say, the more chaotic it got? And now we have to kind of shift focus, and really we've got to keep the runway clear as much as possible.
So I suppose like the doctrinal publication that will teach you how to do a NEO, whatever that's worth, it'll talk about this concept of a comfort area. Mm-hmm. So the folks come in and they're screened by whatever means. Some of them might need some light medical care. They need, a bite to eat, sip of water while they're waiting to be transported out to, either a ship or a plane to leave the country. That's kind of what they told us to set up. So we found on that eastern part of the runway and that kind of industrial sprawl, we found a couple of these large lots that were kind of fenced in. It looked like they may have been used at some point to, park cars or something. So we set up, a little medical tent. We set up as best we possibly could some sort of a bathroom facility. We set up a means to give the folks some food. We went and scrounged everything we could to make some sort of shade so that people could sit. It's kind of cold at night, and then it's pretty hot and humid during the day. So to keep people out of the elements. So we really tried to do the best we could. But our understanding at the time was that the throughput was going to be, we'd have a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people at a time. Mm-hmm. And this seemed reasonable. Mm-hmm. Then again, the news kind of told this story in real time for us. Some of the safe haven locations had met their capacity. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't get more people out. So now we're screening all these folks. policy decisions were made and said, we need to get more. So there's this influx of people coming into the base, and there's no planes to take them anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I was originally told, like, hey, if you get to 1,000, you got to tell us stop. I'm like, okay. We went past 1,000, like that number didn't exist.
Yeah.
And
did
so
you try to exercise that, like, hey, we can't? What happened?
Figured out.
Yeah.
Figured out. And so in this series of like solving problems, a problem comes up, you solve the problem, you move on to the next problem. And we can talk about some of those problems. Some of them they're sort of unique, and my Marines were extremely creative in how they solved some of this. So we wound up growing, as best I can estimate, at any given moment to around 6,000 people. Wow. inside these holding areas. I had 100 Marines. So that's 6,000 people worth of food at any given moment, and water, 6,000 people worth of sanitary needs, 6,000 people worth of medical concerns, and they have nowhere to go.
So just for context, while some were kind of standing on this wall that were kind of really trying to manage how many people were coming in, everybody just being stacked up and it just turning chaotic of people that were just becoming more frantic trying to get in. You were really managing what's happening once they get through that gate, and how do we manage people on the other side, people on the runway, all of that.
Absolutely. And as so there was desperation outside the airport, and we've seen these images, and they're horrifying. There were similar type squalor type just misery playing out on the airport as we're trying to get these people out. So there's a constant influx of folks coming through the gate, getting on planes and leaving. There's an influx as well of folks that have been screened to some degree, that are on the airport, that we now have to determine what's going to happen to them. Mm-hmm. So some of the solved problems were really unique the Marines came up with. We found a lot of folks lost their shoes at these gates. So we've got folks running around on this airport without any shoes. There's all these shipping containers. The Marines went and found shoes. Why were there shipping containers full of shoes? Don't know, but there were. We ran out of food at one point. They're going in the shipping containers and they're finding cases of these MREs. The ground was like a gravel, like a softball size gravel. So there was a gymnasium. They ripped the floor out of the gymnasium and made a place where at least people could try to sit down for a little bit. They were doing everything they could to try to solve one little problem at a time. We had significant security concerns. How do we deal with that? We had gunshot wounds from some that had occurred outside the base before they came in. And at certain points, as we're doing this, we were being shot at. So I have a man walk up to me with a bullet wound. This is a unique situation. I have women who went into labor on the base. We saw the story of the woman who gave birth on the airplane. She went into labor with us. We had a number of men and women who had severe diabetic seizures for not having proper medicine. You name it, and we were dealing with it. And the Marines rising to the task of every single problem that they faced is humbling, it's horrifying, but I'm so stinking proud of them.
I mean, I'm not only proud, and I think that was what my takeaway after doing all the research and hearing some stories and writing about it too. It just is that reminder of this community of people that still try to rise above and do the right thing and do the right thing by humanity, which is so incredibly inspiring. But I don't want to skip over the cost of what that actually costs, because I'm so grateful and I'm so glad that you can speak to that first, of how amazing people were. Exactly the mentoring that you got from that one commander of, we can lean in. How do we lean in creative ways? How do we make a way where it feels like there isn't a way? And even God's provision, like how in the world were these containers filled with those things there when you needed them? Like, there's so many of these moments of provision, but also these moments of mentoring that gave you just enough to feel like you could at least start to succeed, if not succeed. But there's so much of this that we have to talk from a human perspective. I also want to give honor to the fact that there's only so much humans can be asked to do before it starts to take a toll and it costs something from us too.
Yeah. So some of the hard things. There was a family. All right, let's back up a little bit. So State Department, right? They were out there. They had a job to do as well. I'm not in a position to comment on the rights and the wrongs and the goods and the bads. They had a job to do and they did it. Mm-hmm. But we are required to think about these things as humans.
Yeah.
You have, I think the final number is somewhere in the 100,000 and maybe 120,000, 140,000. I don't know the number. It's a big number. And there were a lot of folks who got turned away. Mm-hmm. A lot. And we have to think about what happened to them. It's irresponsible not to. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try really, really, really hard. There was a man who spoke a little bit of English, and he recognized that they were not going to get on a plane. And he approached me, and with a smile on his face, he asked me if I would kill him and his family. Hmm. And he's saying this to me with some confidence. Like, it's okay. Obviously, I did not kill him and his family. And his daughter is sitting there. His daughter's the same age as my daughter. This beautiful girl, these striking eyes. She doesn't understand what her dad is saying. But he knew it might be better if it played out like that. Then who knows what happened to that family. Mm-hmm. That is a thing that happened. We can spend a lot of energy reflecting on why and the inhumanity of it all, but that is a thing that happened. And I have pretty bad dreams sometimes about that little girl's eyes.
Mm-hmm. We are more as human beings taught how to help, but there's very little training on how to handle when you can't help, especially in a very chaotic, emergent situation, and how to process that then later as a soul when you have, going again back to your commander, been taught that we can lean in. We have the skill set and the strength to lean in. But what happens when you don't have the ability, the capability, or the logistical capability to do the thing that you feel like you've been trained and want to do?
Right. There's another vignette, similar situation. This woman approached me and my battery executive officer in perfect English, holding a blue American passport. She said, "I am from Colorado and I'm out of here. I'm leaving. Me and my dad, we're out of here. I have a degree of freedom outside these walls. I'll just take my chances out there, and with the situation at hand, just let me leave." And my XO begged her with all the compassion a human can muster for another human, said, "Don't leave. This is horrible. These conditions are horrible. Everything about this is horrible. Don't leave." It is, I think, even reasonable for somebody to say, "You want to go? Fine, get out of here. Go. I'll take you." And just discard a human. Mm-hmm. They were not cooperating. They were not friendly. The folks who were trying to be evacuated were there, and some of them were so fed up because of their inability to leave. The sensation that they maybe had that they were helpless, or that we weren't going to do what we said we were going to do.
I was trying to look it up on my Facebook messages, and it might have been a phone call instead of a message. There was a point where Jess reached out to me and said that she was worried about you, not just for your safety, because I had put something out when all the media was talking about, was it worth it? I was feeling and experiencing and sensing the moral injury of these questions being played out in real time. We've got people on the ground. It's the wrong time to be asking these questions. And I could just feel the whole culture dropping in morale, but also our stomachs dropping. And I remember Jess reaching out to me going, Andrew is one of those that are there. And I'm concerned. Even when she was talking about at the spouse roundtable, getting that call from you. Can you take us back to that moment? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I want to be vulnerable with you a little bit. There's stuff I just don't really remember too good.
It's okay.
There's days and weeks. There's things that happened even after I got home that are kind of like, Jesse needs to help me remember some of the details. So there was a day, right in the thick of all of it. There had just been a riot, and we had gotten the riot to a little bit of a more manageable point. We had the help of an Army psychological operations unit that were able to help us communicate in a way. We had the help of some folks who volunteered to interpret, and we were able to get this crowd of thousands a little bit more manageable. In the midst of that, a man had been shot, and he came up to me and he's telling me this. There were some children who had been horribly injured. It was super hot out. Hadn't eaten in a couple of days. It was pretty bad. We were feeling pretty bad. I looked down, and I had human feces all over my boot. And then it started to rain, And I had in that moment, I had this like thought. I was like, this is it. This is the worst day of my life. Mm-hmm. I had that thought. Mm-hmm. And then it started to rain harder. And I said, okay, I am never thinking that thought again. Mm. I am removing that thought from my lexicon of like I feel bad for myself right now. Mm-hmm. Because I wasn't embodying what's the best thing that could happen right now. Mm. I wasn't embodying why I was there. I was feeling sorry for myself. Mm-hmm. And so we moved on. We moved on from that. There was a moment, we're all relatively familiar with what happened on August 26th. When something like that happens, communications get shut down. I called my wife. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think the basics of it were, this is pretty bad. I love you. Take care of the kids. Mm-hmm. And regardless of what happened after that, I was accepting of it. And then on we had to go. And I think after that call, looking back on it, I probably left her pretty worried. And maybe I wish I had not done that, but I wanted her to know I was okay.
Yeah. I won't speak for your wife, but I will speak as a spouse. Those calls are always the best calls to get. Any kind of connection, regardless of what worry comes from it. It is a reminder of the things that really matter. And in this situation, there was a whole lot of things that mattered. Almost everything had value. The people that you were trying to serve and manage had value. The Marines that you were leading had value. It's hard to rank those when you're walking literally through what you just described you were walking through. But I think in those moments where you have that chance to give that call, it's just kind of that moment where we're all grateful that we had a chance to connect. And that's what matters, right?
Right.
Do you want to share a little bit of what it was like to come home?
Yeah. So I think, again, like trying to contextualize it a little bit. There are these extreme highs, extreme lows on HKIA. There were positive things that happened. The 26th happened, and it was like and I really don't want to make light of this and dismiss any of it at all, because that was a horrific day. But it was as though the city of Kabul understood the gravity, and it was quiet. It had not been quiet the whole time, and it was quiet. And I think from there, the attitude of the Marines had shifted a little bit. There was some real anger.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I think the Marine Corps did really well was start to lean into flooding support to where the Marines were going to go back to. So we left. We went from Afghanistan back to Kuwait, and we were there for several weeks. And at first, they told us to rest, be clean, because we were not.
Mm-hmm.
Be clean, get some good food, get some good rest, and they kind of left us alone for a couple of days. And then they established a series of kind of like town hall is the wrong word, but kind of like focus group, kind of, but like in populations to have like different levels of conversation. Mm-hmm. They encouraged us to talk to each other a lot. This was sort of a unique situation because I didn't really know the Marines, so I took that as an opportunity to actually get to know them. Mm-hmm. And then to transition, because ultimately it's that question, like, what's the best thing that could happen right now? I think contextually, like, we were an artillery battery. We fire the big guns, and we go out to the field, and we live hard, and we train, and we weren't doing any of those things. Mm-hmm. We were a provisional rifle company. Mm-hmm. So I decided in that moment that the shift mentally was like, these are artillery Marines. Let's get back into our culture. Let's think about what it would look like when we get back to Camp Lejeune. We resume our training. What do the Marines need to be fit to be able to do that? Mm-hmm. So we talked about it. We put the structure of the leadership of the battery kind of from an infantry company back into an artillery battery. And there's some nuance there. And then we put them to the task of training and getting reset to go home, thinking about positive things. Like, what are we going to do with our time when we get back? Where's home? Where's reconnecting? Some of the guys, they had kids while they were gone. Me developing relationships with the leaders and what's that all look like. So spent some time in Kuwait. That was tough because I think all of us want to just kind of wash the dirt off of our feet and get back home. But then we actually got to come home, and I think you have this picture in your mind of a welcome home, and there's a tent, and there's passing out beers and high-fiving and all that. It wasn't really like that. So I think it maybe let the Marines maybe felt a little bit let down. Mm-hmm. It was super rainy. We got home at like 2 a.m. We were delayed a little bit, and some of the families who would have been there had to go home. So it was kind of disappointing. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it was like, okay, you're going to take your leave. You're going to be gone. It was getting close to like Thanksgiving time. Mm-hmm. So we kind of tried to gather around. Let's just go catch our breath. Mm-hmm. I met our Navy psychologist through that experience. Wonderful woman, and she suggested to me that the impact of all of this may take a little bit of time for some of the concerns to manifest. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what's that mean? What's that mean? So she gave me some thoughts. Look for these things. Look for folks who are pulling away. Look for folks whose behavior is really off the baseline. Mm-hmm. Look for extremes. And when you see that, talk to them. Mm-hmm. Talk to them. I think moral injury. Folks talk about PTSD, and I study a little bit of that. And moral injury is this other thing. Mm-hmm. Some of the symptoms and whatnot maybe look a little similar, but it's this other thing. And treating it is another thing. So I didn't necessarily feel prepared, but I'm a human. And I was feeling the same thing that they were feeling. So as I felt it in me, I just assumed they were feeling it too. So fast forward in a couple of weeks, the fanfare of coming home and the tents and whatever was supposed to happen that didn't happen sort of wore off. And it's like, okay, we go back to work. And my opinion, and this is my opinion alone, is that it's like the world would have rather just forgot.
Yeah.
It was exciting, and it was in social media, and it was in the news, and it was everywhere, and it was horrible, and everybody would just rather forget. And the Marines felt that like a ton of bricks. It's like, I thought we did something good here, and nobody will talk about it.
As you were even just describing it right now, it almost sounds like everybody just watched a Netflix show.
Yeah.
And it ended.
Yeah. I think it didn't cost the average person very much. In emotional resources, they wow, that's sad, but look, like, we brought all these people, we evacuated all these people, like, that's good. And then they were just willing to move on to the next exciting thing in the news cycle or whatever.
Where would you describe moral injury in this situation? I think it's multi-layered. But where did you experience that moral injury on those different layers?
I do carry a tremendous feeling of guilt, and it's irrational, and it is placed on a thought that maybe there's something else I could do. In the things that I've read, there's this idea that, folks that are in a position of authority cause you to do something that violates your moral axioms. Deeply held beliefs have been violated. A man telling me to kill his family violates deeply who I am. The fact that that situation existed is what violates me, not that a desperate man was pleading to me for mercy. So I got home, for a variety of reasons. My wife and kids needed to stay here in Northern Virginia. I'm back here now. For anybody who's listening, this maybe is a confusing timeline. But at the time, I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, by myself. So the family goes home. So it's me and my dog back in my little house in Camp Lejeune. And it's time to unpack my things, clean my gear, and get ready to go back and do what Marines do and go back to train. And there was this moment as I am taking my gear out of my bags, where it's as though I went from being in my house to being in Afghanistan. And I was there again. And I felt all of those feelings again. And the reason I want to share this is because there are other folks who have experienced something like this, who maybe feel like they can't talk about it. So I'm in this room in my house, and I pass out. All of it came back all at once. Maybe I put some of it away. Maybe I was unwilling to even think about it. And all of it came back, and I pass out. And this little sweet dog that I have is on me, barking at me. I don't know how long. I don't know. And I just said, I need to talk to somebody.
Can I ask for clarification in case somebody else has experienced that? Did you feel this flooding of emotion or thought or whatever and black out and pass out, or did you dissociate? Or both?
When I was aware of my surroundings again, I was on the floor.
Yeah. So you full on blacked out, passed out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started to notice other things. I liked, in the evenings, I didn't have much to do. After the workday, I would sit in the driveway and have a little bonfire and listen to some tunes. The smell of fire, the sound of rain, little moments. It's like I would be where I was, and then it's like I was not there anymore. I don't know what that is. I've spoken to psychologists, they've described it to me, but all I can tell you, it's like I was no longer there. I was somewhere else. I was seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling as though I was right back in Afghanistan. And the next opportunity that I had to talk to that psychologist, I did. I said, I need help. I need help. And I know my Marines need help. And one of the harder things to do was to tell the Marines, like, hey, your fearless leader is going to go talk to somebody. If anybody is feeling like this, if anybody is thinking like this, come with me. And from then until now, I've been trying to do everything that I can to champion that and talk to people about it, because this is, in my understanding, the moral injury side is kind of a lesser understood area and needs more research. And I know that there are folks who need help who may hear this conversation, and I'll talk to every last one of you.
Well, and can I just ask, because I think this is something that a lot of veterans, both active duty and that have been out for a while, really struggle with knowing when to ask for help, because I think there's a lot of like pushing through, leaning in, right? Like we talked about. And so what was the moment where you realized, like, this is beyond what I can manage on my own, and now this has crossed the line where I need help?
I think for me, it was just recognizing that I felt guilty and I just didn't understand why. I understood that I did what I was told to do. I understood that there was a broader perspective. There were strategic level decisions being made by high level leaders. They did not mean any of those bad things to happen to me. But where I could not remove the feeling of guilt, that's where I was like, there's something going on here in my mind that feels this, and I don't know what to do with it.
So when we talk about those different layers of moral injury, on one hand, you have this father who asks you to go against your morals and your values and asking you to do something. On another hand, like you just said, there was, let's say, military leadership that was asking you to do something that it didn't fit within the context of what you had been trained to do before. And whether that was help more people when you can't, or we can't help anymore, or whatever that tasking was that left you in a place where you had to go against something that you deep down inside from a moral place wanted to do something different. But I think that there is other moral injuries. I think that there is coming home to an America and a country that also sent you, whether they realize it or not, that asked you to do something when they didn't, or they didn't sign up, or it didn't cost them something. And that's their choice, and that is their right with an all-volunteer force. But there is a sending, whether they realize it or not. And so there's a moral injury that when we come home and people don't want to talk about it anymore, there's a secondary or tertiary moral injury there that is, wait a minute, I need to talk about this. One of the reasons why I love to keep going back to that very ancient tribal ceremony of healing, where warriors would come back to the village and they would share the story with the village, because the village is the one that sent them. They took on this trauma and this injury on behalf of the village. So by sharing that with everybody, we now share the trauma. There's not just one person walking around carrying it and holding it and trying to figure out how to wrestle with it in their mind and put it in the right container. By sharing it, we share the burden together, and now we walk with it together. And so when you come home and nobody wants to talk about it, in addition, what was happening is people just wanting to question whether or not it was all worth it in the first place. There was a lot of injury happening to the entire cohort, but especially for you guys who actually had to live that out and carry with you those memories. So the more you not only have to make the choices as best as you can and live with those choices as best as you can, but then not being able to talk about it. I think that's also one of the reasons why you wanted to, I think, share your story, is because there was a lot of inability to really talk about it. And where do you talk about it if people just want to move on?
Yeah. I noticed a lot of energy come back when we approached like 1 year after.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I noticed a lot of energy come out. There were some hearings that happened, not so long ago, and some of the HKIA vets got to speak, and their words are valuable, and they're much more free to speak than I am. And there were some hard things that were shared there. I think America has a short memory sometimes, because there will likely be something resembling a non-combatant evacuation operation again. And sure, it's embarrassing. I don't know. Some of the stuff that happened is probably embarrassing. But who are we? Who do we decide that we're going to be? Because we did try, at the tactical level. Like let's talk about like the Marines that were there. We did try. We did everything that we could do for the folks that were there, and a lot of good came of that. But like folks have a short memory sometimes in this country, and the next bad thing that happens, well, folks remember, like we did not like that. And we're going to do better. We can't go back. We can't what if it to death and think about like, if there's some way to make it better, it's past. But who are we going to be next time something like this happens? What are we going to do? What resources are we going to flood? Who are we going to be as a nation to try to take care of these other people who maybe can't take care of themselves? I hope that we choose to be a little bit better. And I think as far as equipping ourselves to do that, we need to teach it. We need to not be afraid to teach it. Sometimes I think in the military we teach management. I don't think we teach leadership. And we need to teach leadership. And these are some of those hard areas in leadership that we need to be willing to dig deep into, because they're really hard.
Well, maybe this is a hard question to ask you when you're in the midst of seeking out healing for it yourself. But as a leader, what do you feel is a healthy way to start to heal the moral injury of those that you experienced Afghanistan with, but maybe some of those who experienced a good portion of GWAT who feel at least that moral injury from their country?
Yeah. The best tool I have is the relationships with these Marines who have become my family and my friends. Yeah. And I don't say that lightly. My brother, who is a combat vet 10 times over, talked to me before I left, and he said, take pictures. Take pictures, because if something happens, you'll want those pictures. So whatever that looks like going forward, take pictures. Write it down. Keep track of the people that you served with, and stay in contact with them and talk with them. Do face-to-face if you can do face-to-face. That's uncomfortable I see that a little bit with younger folks. They're uncomfortable with face-to-face. Whatever it is, do it. Talk to people and have deep, meaningful relationships, because you'll trust each other more. You'll depend on each other more, and there will be value there as you build richness in your personal community, and then you'll be able to participate in that richness with others too, right? I'm reading a book called Bounce. It's about resilience, and it talks about like, who are these role players that we have in our lives? Some of the voices that we ought to have in our life, folks that'll challenge us, folks that'll help us kind of make fun of ourselves, folks that'll cheer us along, and then folks that will ultimately like put us in the direction of our intentions. But that's not enough. Like, great, go seek out positive relationships, but then who can you be in those voices to other people too? Right? And I think in the military, we're in a unique position, because some of the social media stuff, because we train so much and we live in misery together, and we enjoy that. We are able to get past some of the social media stuff, but a lot of folks aren't.
Yeah.
So how are they going to do that? So get involved in your local community, go volunteer and do something, get involved in a local church, get involved at your volunteer stuff at work, and if you're not, reach out to a service organization and get involved and do something, but develop richness in your personal community Because when the blows come, and they will, can you actually absorb it and respond in a positive way?
I think that's a phenomenal answer to that. And it reminds me of an interview that I did with a mentor of ours who is a chaplain in the Army, who is an expert in moral injury. And I'm so glad that we talked about this today, because I think I'm going to repackage that interview and put it in this series. And one of the things that I loved about what he said is that it actually has to start with the community. That when we come back to the community, and the community embraces you and accepts you and says that you did what you did and you did the best that you could, and there's no fault that we find in you, then there's that community of fellowship or community of acceptance, or we welcome you back to the tribe. Even though there were these moral decisions that you had to make that make you feel other, that we as a community receive you as part of still the tribe, that then we're able to have those relationships with our spouse, and out of the outpouring of being accepted back into the home, back into our community, and not being other, then we can have that relationship and that conversation with God and the healing that we can have with God. Whatever we have to suffer through, like, you'll never be able to heal completely the wounds that you experience from that trip. There will be smells, there will be sights, there will be things that take you back there. We can't erase what happens when there's trauma, and that trauma burns in our minds and has the ability to invade our present. Like, that is not something we may ever experience full healing on this side of heaven. So what do? Community and relationships with other people is a part that helps serve and meet and heal those wounds as we share our story, as we reach out to others. Like, we become the healing, or at least the relief that's partial healing, while we're still alive, right? And so without community, it is, a huge marker or risk of suicide when someone is by themselves, feeling completely misunderstood, feeling completely other. If we don't get involved in community, and if community doesn't get involved with us, moral injury can't be healed. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, what I had left was that God loved me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's there.
Yeah.
I have folks who love me too.
Mm-hmm.
And their willingness to bring me back is what got me to a place where I could even have this conversation. Probably about a year ago, probably not happening. There are organizations out there, and I really like their message. And I don't know if I
Please.
Tagline, PB Abate, they talk about come all the way home. Come all the way home. Because not everybody can.
Mm-hmm.
Come all the way home. That's a big message, because my kids deserve a dad, not half of a dad or a shell of a dad. And just as much as in my mind I was in another place when those feelings came and those surges, and they still do, I need to be here. My kids, my wife, I need to be here. And the hopelessness and those feelings and all of that, like, there is a way to work through that. God is always there. God is so good.
Mm-hmm.
God is so good. But you're right. Come all the way home.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. Andrew, is there anything that's on your heart that you would want to share or make sure other leaders hear?
If any of this makes its way to anybody who feels like they don't have somebody to talk to, and they experienced HKIA or something associated with it, and they don't have a leader to talk to, or they've moved on to another unit, or they got out, by whatever means, I will talk to you, and I help and point you at resources and whatever I can do, or just talk. Mm-hmm. Because we should not be alone. We should not feel like we are alone. Mm-hmm. And I would want to do that. The other piece, and I didn't reflect on this, there are folks who may feel left out, like they missed it. I didn't give this enough thought. When we got back, we had some new Marines join the unit, and they saw, what it all played out. and maybe they feel like they missed out. I felt like I had missed out. There will be a time to use what you have learned to the benefit of others, but don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. It's easy to be a little bit naive, but if you feel like you're joining a unit and you don't feel ready for what's coming, talk to your leadership about that. Those feelings of insufficiency, or you're hearing stories and the stories are hard to hear, and a little bit of that vicarious feelings of frustration or fear. Talk to somebody about it. Mm-hmm. There are brand new folks joining the military today who aren't joining the military in conflict. Mm-hmm. And everyone that they'll look at just came out of 20 years worth. And they may feel like I'm missing out on something. Mm-hmm. Don't feel that way. We have a mission, we have a job to do. Ask yourself, what's the best thing that I could do right now? Learn your job and go do it. We don't need to sit on some mountain of glory, because the truth is it's just not that glorious. Some of it's really, really, really ugly.
Even while our U.S. service members and coalition partners were attempting to get safely out of Afghanistan, American media was already using phrases like, was it worth it? And is this our Vietnam? Across ticker tapes and interviews with our Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. In desperation at the time, I reached out to my father, an Air Force pilot who flew out of Saigon with Operation Baby Lift. I was hoping to gain some wisdom and some perspective. How would we begin to heal from this? Where could we go from here? Here's a little bit of what he shared.
Our soldiers over there in Afghanistan, they went there to do the best job that they could. And I think they did, given the constraints that were put on them. We all feel like we could have done a better job if they would have just let us. But many times we don't have control over that. And sometimes that's difficult. And even looking back, they said they couldn't fill our plane because they couldn't process them fast enough. Well, at that point, who cares? Throw them on the plane and we'll take them. But, you have to kind of work within the system sometimes, and that can be very frustrating. But that's kind of what we signed up for. They did a fabulous job. I mean, I can't imagine trying to take off with people on the runway and people hanging on your plane, or even taxiing that plane knowing that you might hurt somebody who's running along beside you. I can't imagine the stress that they felt. And, I'm sure they didn't want to hurt anybody. They were trying to save everybody. But at the same time, they can say, hey, we brought 800 people out or whatever. So I think that's what you have to look at, not what you couldn't do, but what you could do with the resources that you were given.
His advice was a lot more simple than I expected, and at the time, too simple to calm my own anger and confusion. However, looking back, it reminds me of what Andrew's mentor also said to him, that not every bad thing ends in calamity. In the moment, we might feel like calamity is looming. In fact, anytime we reach the limits of our ethics, our strength, or our understanding, we are sure to believe that we are at the end of ourselves too. Yet stories like Andrew's and many others who have experienced the horrors and the heroics of war remind us that we don't change the world by facing adversity. We change the world when we find the courage to live differently because of it.
I had to break free, it took a long while. From lonely and searching to a big old smile. From thinking I didn't deserve what I need, to finding my freedom and time to really be me. I'm finding my voice, it's good to be heard. I'm making connections, stories and words to heal warrior hearts, the better to see. Now I know it's time to really be me. Dogs and fourth graders show me the light. I see myself in their innocent eyes. Whenever I worry for what I may lack, they give me some of my innocence back. And now it's time to heal.
In the Military Culture Shift podcast is sponsored by New Res and written and produced by me, author, speaker, and military clinical consultant Corie Weathers. The closing credits song is Time to Be Me, written and performed by veterans Sally Griffiths and Will Kimbrough with Songwriting with Soldiers. This is a supplemental leadership podcast for the book Military Culture Shift, The Impact of War, Money, and Generational Perspective on Morale, Retention, and Leadership. Copies of the book can be purchased on Amazon, militaryfamilybooks.com, and your other favorite retailers. More information, including graphs, data, and other resources mentioned in the book, can be found on my website, CorieWeathers.com.
Teachers are learning as much as their kids. There's no use keeping your feelings all hid. It's okay to cry. I want them to see the person I am when I can't really be me. And now it's time to heal, time to break free. I know it's time to be real and time to be me. I'm not just a mother, not just a Marine. I've carried the burden of everything. I treasure the silence to sit here and breathe, the joy I've found now that I can really be me. And now it's time to heal, time to break free. I know it's time to be real and time to be free. Now it's time to heal, time to break free. I know it's time to be real, time to be me, time to be me, time to be me, time to be me.